time for a change, and the champ cars are moving to road courses. Andretti from second place goes screaming into the lead. Unbelievable. Today, it's the road course in Portland. Here, without walls, they can take great risks and do. Portland is home to some of the greatest finishes in history.
He is out of fuel, dropping to the inside, and here comes the finish line. Who's going to win it?
Happy Father's Day, Dad.
Oh, it's going to be a photo finish, and Mark Blundell takes the victory.
There are only 2 former winners in the field, so the race is wide open.
Happy Father's Day from the great Pacific Northwest, Portland, Oregon, and Portland International Raceway, where we're ready for the Budweiser 200 for the CART FedEx Championship Series. Hi and welcome. I'm Paul Page with Parker Johnstone. We're standing on the absolute most critical section of this racetrack, the end of the long pit straightaway into an area they call the Festival Curves. All the action happens here. The race is often decided here.
Well, it is, Paul. The drivers come down the straightaway at 185 miles an hour. They stand on the brakes, slam through the gears. Sometimes they're 2, 3, even 4 abreast. The problem, this first corner. It's only wide enough for a car and a half. This year, they've widened it by 12 feet. But the drivers realize with the intense pressure in this series that if the pass is going to happen, it's got to happen here, sometimes with spectacular results.
And they are always worried about the start of the race here. We only have to go back 1 year to the start of the race, when Greg Moore climbed over everybody, took himself out, and Paul Tracy with him. Now, let's go to Gary Gerould.
Paul, on that wild scramble going down into turn number 1, we've got 3 cars to definitely keep an eye on at mid-pack, starting with Dario Franchitti right here. He starts 12th. They thought he would be starting from the front row, but instead he's at mid-pack. And right behind him, Greg Moore, who was in the middle of the wild melee a year ago, and next to him, Michael Andretti. All 3 capable of winning a race where in the past nobody from further back than 11th has ever won at Portland. As for the front row, let's check in with Jan Beekes.
Well, Gary, 7 times this race has been won from the front row, and today may be no exception. Juan Montoya has snagged his 3rd pole position of the season. Of course, we're now on the kind of racetrack that he likes. But right next door is a guy that he called himself Brave Boy, and that would be Helio Castroneves. And we know here at Portland, you want to be brave, but not too brave in turn number 1.
Well, let's take a look at the starting grid and the way they qualified with the rookie Juan Montoya on the front row alongside Helio Castroneves. The same lineup that they had at Nazareth. Back in the second row, Gil de Ferran and Brian Herta, who won the last race held on a natural terrain course. In row number 3, Adrian Fernandez and Paul Tracy, the winner at Milwaukee 2 weeks ago. Row 4 is Jimmy Vasser and Patrick Carpentier will start alongside. The 5th row, Christian Fittipaldi and Max Pappas, both looking for their first wins. Roberto Moreno, Dario Franchitti make up row 6. Row 7, Greg Moore and Michael Andretti, both winners this year. The 8th row, Cristiano D'Amata and Mauricio Gugelmin. Back in row 9, Tony Kanaan and Tarso Marquez driving for Penske. Row 10, Scott Pruitt and Robbie Gordon in all Toyota row. The 11th row, Richie Hearn and Walter Salas in the All-American Eagle. In row 12, P.J. Jones and Michel Jourdain Jr. In the 13th row, Mimo Gidley, his first Champ Car start, and Alan Unser Jr. And in the 14th row, Luis Garcia Jr. and Shigeaki Hattori. Now, the car is rolling on the course, just under 2 miles here. 98 laps our distance, and it is a 12-turn road course. Parker?
And Paul, 3 names to look for this race. Tarso Marquez rejoining Al Unser Jr. He's still in the Penske while Al's in the Lola. And of course, the change at All-American Racers. We've got now substituting for Alex Baring, Walter Salas. Dan Gurney said he wanted a different opinion from an experienced driver. And Mimo Gidley substituting for Naoki Hattori in the Derek Walker Racing Team ride.
All right, let's go to Gary Gerould, trackside.
We mentioned the fact that they thought Dario Franchitti would be starting in the front row. Why isn't he? Well, Inadvertently, the Firestone folks mounted a rear tire backwards. It went on the car without the crew catching it, and that's why late in the qualifying session yesterday, Franchitti was unable to surge forward and challenge Montoya for the pole position. Now, they've sacrificed some downforce. They're gambling, rolling the dice. They've taken away a little downforce for the front straightaway, hoping that he can gain speed, get into a position where he can outbrake people going into the festival curves and challenge, but he's back there starting 12th. Big gamble for that bunch.
The drivers have all been cautioned in the driver meeting about the start. They've been given an exact position to begin acceleration and where they would like to see the flag, and that they want that front row properly aligned. Remember, we've had some problems getting these races underway.
And Paul, talking as Gary did about taking downforce out of Dario's car, that's a gamble because we have had sprinkles on and off today. And if you have a lot of downforce taken out of the car and it starts to rain, you're going to be in a world of hurt. But we're going to keep our eye on this driver, Dario Franchitti. Look for him to move up and move up quickly.
I think in the forecast right now we're really talking about during the race time sprinkles only. Off and on there's been a little bit of moisture, not enough to change anything throughout the morning as we prepared for the run here in the Budweiser 200. Off the carousel, now the front row does begin to align. As they come out from under the bridge, starter takes a good look at the field. And here we go. Now this first corner, remember how absolutely critical it is. Lots of hard braking, clean to this point. Oh, so very tight in the second turn. And Tarso Marquez gets in trouble, bounces across the bump strips, but then he continues on. So everybody clear through turn one. Now coming over to the backside of this circuit. Castroneves. Then Montoya. So Castroneves, good piece of driving, jumped from the outside of the front row and into the lead of the run. Then Montoya and then Gil de Ferran.
Paul, that was a great start for Castroneves, using that Lola to his advantage. This car produces a lot of downforce, and it is cool and as overcast as it is, it'll produce even more downforce with this dense air. This guy is driving from his heart. We've got the two hardest young Chargers in the series now fighting for that opening lead as we come to the stripe for lap number one.
Report from the course observers that Tony Kanaan and Tarso Marquez were the two that actually got together briefly in the second turn. Both of them continued on. Montoya now begins to work on Castroneves.
Paul, look at the pace these two are setting already. They've pulled out a significant lead over Gil de Ferran on the Goodyear shod car. We can see Paul Tracy there shadowing de Ferran, but still Montoya and Castroneves have already pulled out a substantial lead in only a lap and a half as they come onto the back straightaway.
So as we watch the leaders here, we're going to take a look back and watch the field come through. There's de Ferran, Tracy, Herta, Fernandez, Vassar, and look at this. 9th place, Dario Franchitti has already come very quickly forward.
And it looks like there, Paul, in that last lap, he's actually gotten around Christian Fittipaldi for 8th place. Now, we knew that Dario would be right up to the front. They had the problem with the tire yesterday. It's important to realize that each tire, each rear and each front is built for a specific corner. If they're mounted backwards, then the car's handling is absolutely diabolical. They thought something had broken in the car. Dario was the most upset he said he's ever been in a race car, but he's taking that anger, focusing it in his driving. We're going to see him pick off a few more drivers, I think, in the next few laps.
Dario Franchitti up closing behind Jimmy Vassar. He must have done some tolerable fine driving to be able to get around as many cars as he did. Of course, he picked a few of them off at the start when everybody went wide. But we'll watch him now as he works on Jimmy Vassar.
And as I've said in the past, Paul, Dario Franchitti can drive a car farther and harder than anyone else on the least amount of fuel without damaging his tires. He's got this innate ability to drive extremely hard and still make great progress through the field, and I think that's what he's doing right now.
Parker, they already told him at the start of the race to go down 3 clicks on the boost. Now, we don't know if that's coded or not, but if in fact he has gone down, they are in the fuel conservation mode, even as he attempts to charge.
A little further back, Patrick Carpentier, Max Pappas. On board Michael now, Greg Moore ahead.
they run through this corner, Paul, at about 110 miles an hour, pulling just over 3.5 Gs. You can see how aggressive Mike's being with the steering wheel there. Up to 130 in the short chute. 85 miles an hour through this right-hander.
Look at the Kmart telemetry from Michael's car. Chasing Moore just ahead, who just got around him.
Approaching 190 miles an hour down this back straightaway, Paul. It's going to be a little slower in the beginning with full fuel. A quick left-right flick through turns 10 and 11. Down to third gear, 70 miles an hour through this hairpin, leading onto the pit straightaway.
Just ahead, Franchitti still working on Vassar, no change there. Then Christian Fittipaldi, then Carpentier and Pappas. On board Fittipaldi.
A lot of the drivers this weekend, Paul, are starting to run headrests on the left side because of this long sweeping right-hand corner. It's almost as bad as a high-speed oval with the kind of G's these guys are experiencing.
Back at the front of the field, Helio Castroneves, who jumps from the outside of the front row and into the start, continues to lead. This is the 5th race that Castroneves has led this year. Juan Montoya sits just behind him, but does not seem to be able to catch him. So the race is underway on Father's Day here at Portland International Raceway. We'll be back with more right after this. Back with the Budweiser 200 Portland International Raceway. Paul Page with Parker Johnstone. Nothing has changed in the order except that Helio Castroneves and Juan Montoya have been pulling a little bit away from the 3rd place car of Gil de Ferran as we take a look at the current standings with 7 laps complete. But now, too, we're beginning to get some reports of drizzle in different sections of the race course. You see it on a camera lens from time to time. Not enough to really change anything in terms of the competition, but perhaps predictive of something.
And Paul, for the drivers, they'll start to pick up some mist on their visors. It really doesn't affect the handling of the car, the stopping or the accelerating, but as it starts to get a little thicker, as they continue to push, all of a sudden they'll feel the car step out. And depending on the amount of drizzle, it's very difficult for our lead car, Helio Castroneves, to judge how deep to go. It's much easier for Montoya and the trailing cars to use him as a rabbit.
Let's go pit side, Gary.
Well, every team has got rain tires stacked right up next to the wall, ready in position in case. And of course, Paul, over the years, we've been through this drill a couple of times here at Portland International Raceway. And believe me, if it rains hard enough that they've got to make a key decision about going from the slicks to the groove tires, it becomes an entirely new ball game. That could happen in the next couple of hours because it continues to drizzle at a steady pace, but it's not anything right now of major concern.
And Gary, let's not also forget that in 3rd place, Gil de Ferran is on Goodyear tires. So not only do we have a nice tussle on the dry tires, but they also would like to see possible rain because they think that they are really strong on Goodyear's wet tires as well.
Watching the battle for 5th place with Brian Herta. Now we go forward up to 3rd position. Castroneves, Montoya, they're the front of the field. This is 3rd place de Ferran. Paul Tracy is behind him. Then Herta, Fernandez, Vassar, and Dario Franchitti. Report from the race course that Walter Salles may be having problems with his car. They were saying smoke at the back end. Here on the pit straight, we'll take a look. He's continuing at speed. Officials have called for a black flag on this lap. There are 2 places for display of the black flag, one over on the pit straight at the start-finish line, and the other, well, more than smoke, there's some fire underneath there. And he'll see a black flag as he comes around the next set of corners. The question is, will he pull it off right there? Certainly his crew can radio him as well. And right now it seems to be fairly safe, but let's hope it doesn't grow any more than that.
And Paul, as we watch Brian Herta, there were only a few teams in this morning warm-up that scrubbed their rain tires to take that glaze, that resin from the tire molds off. We were supposed to be forecasted for nice weather this afternoon, but some of those teams took that precaution, and that could pay dividends if it starts to rain a little harder.
Greg Moore was able to get around Roberto Moreno for 12th place. We're back watching Brian Herta in 5th. Fernandez is right behind him. Fernandez has been working him for a couple of laps now.
And everyone expected Brian Herta to be right at the front for this race. He was disappointed to have qualified 4th, Paul, after his victory last year at Laguna Seca. and also his success at Long Beach earlier in the year. But you've got to remember that Castroneves, Montoya have shown renewed strength, especially Montoya coming into the series and dominating not only at Long Beach, but also on the ovals and now here on the permanent road course. He's done so well, and as we ride along, just as we have on the ovals, Paul, watch his hands, watch his car control.
Yeah, and keep an eye on the rain. That's more than I expected that came up on the camera visor there. Of course, we can electronically clear that, so now you can see how long it takes for it to build up again.
And at this point, the drivers are seeing about the same amount, Paul, and that won't affect the cars. If it gets much heavier, it will. You see that quick flick, Paul? He caught it there. Back end stepped out for just an instant. He's driving much more conservatively now in the race than we saw earlier in practice and qualifying. Fastest part of the race course there, just at 190 miles an hour.
Walter Salas has brought his car into the pits, so he is in safely. Fire is out. Back looking now for 11th place, Max Papis. There he is, the dark blue car, the wings on the rear wing, and he's being pursued by Greg Moore. Now, just 2 laps ago, Moore was able to get around Roberto Moreno. Now he's working on Papis. That's a critical part. If you're not going to pass there, then you're probably going to have to wait for yet another lap.
The problem is, Paul, the rest of the course is relatively narrow for the speed these cars are traveling, and unless the driver in front of you makes an enormous mistake, you can't capitalize on it. Even a small mistake might get you close, but it won't be enough to get by. So the drivers do everything they can to try to have the cars come out of the last corner on the pit straight as quickly as possible, try to get into a tow, pop out, and then outbrake into the festival curves.
The completion of lap 12, the top 6 cars in the field all just turned the fastest lap, individual lap of the race, up at 117 miles an hour.
We've watched lap after lap, Paul, where Castroneves and Montoya have been trading race's quickest laps, but on that last lap, Castroneves was almost 4/10 quicker than the rest of the field at a 60.3, while everybody else is running in the 60.7 plus range.
Doesn't look like Moore is really within attack distance, but under braking closes down. There's the festival curves, turn 1, then turn 2. They have renumbered the turns here. If you remember how they were from last year, this is the view down from the Honda Helicam.
And Paul, as we can see Greg Moore and just in front of Max Papis, there is teammate Patrick Carpente. Keep in mind this players team has spent all winter focusing its test efforts on the road courses. They were so good on the ovals last year, they didn't feel they needed to spend any additional money, effort, and time on the road courses. They showed it at Homestead. They were very, very quick. And yet now on the road courses, they're not living up to the expectations that they had hoped for.
And this has now become a 5-way battle as Roberto Moreno and Michael Andretti tack on to the back of this fight. Let's go to the pits. The update on Walter Salas, Gary.
Walter, what happened?
We had a gearbox failure this morning in the warm-up. The third gear broke. We did fix it for the race, but with very few laps, we started to get some smoke and some oil out of the gearbox, and that was it. That was the day for us.
Tough way to make a debut in that Eagle chassis.
So just that quickly, in the first 10 laps, Walter Salas is out of the run with the Dan Gurney Eagle. The leader remains Helio Castroneves. Montoya is not able to close on him, sits back almost a full second with Gil de Ferran still in third. We'll be back with more from the Budweiser 200. Our Toyota Spotlight focuses on the drivers earning their first career win here at Portland. In '84, Al Unser Jr. captured the first of 31 career victories. 1996, it was Alex Zanardi who followed suit, earning his first kart win of the road course. And in '97, Mark Blundell edged out Gil de Ferran by 27 thousandths of a second to capture his first victory, the closest kart finish ever. Today, well, will this be the man who puts the victory into his column for the first time in his career? Helio Castroneves, 1.2 seconds ahead of Juan Montoya.
And Paul, Montoya right now is pushing very hard. He just turned the race's quickest lap at a 60.2. He wants to be within striking distance of Helio Castroneves because he knows that his team's one of the best in the business at getting the pit work done. So he doesn't want Helio to get too far away, but if he's going to pass him, he's got to do it in the pits. but he's got to be close enough to take advantage of that superior servicing that his team can give him.
Parker, and from the pits for Montoya, they're doing some cheerleading on the radio. They're telling him, don't give up on Castro Neves. They're urging him to stay up there and fight, stay right within striking distance where he can capitalize on a mistake.
Well, right now we haven't seen either one of these drivers make a mistake, Paul, but they're driving extremely hard as they continue to trade races' fastest laps.
All right, we have a great opportunity here and now to go on board with Montoya. We're going to try and do that and just ride with him as he pursues Castro Neves for a couple of laps. Whoa!
It's very physically demanding in comparison to the ovals they've been on. He's shifting over 20 times a lap under continuous heavy G loading, both fore, aft, and side to side. And what happens is these guys have trained especially hard for this weekend because they know the two road courses in particular of Portland and Mid-Ohio put a premium on conditioning. These two young drivers are extremely fit. They haven't made a mistake yet, but on a road course, you've got plenty of opportunities to make a mistake.
In the meantime, that battle between Daryl Franchitti and Jimmy Vasser has warmed up again. This is a fight for 7th. Remember, Franchitti started back in 13th in what their team certainly thought really should have been a pole, if not front row position. But they had that mechanical problem, a tire mounted up wrong, and as a result, his qualifying effort was not nearly as strong as they had hoped, and in fact, they had expected, or for that matter, that Franchitti proved he could run in the pre-race warm-up. So now he's stuck back behind Jimmy Vasser trying to get around, but his race really seems to have finally found its own level.
Well, my assumption would be, Paul, is that Dario at this point realizes that it's hard for him to get any farther forward, so what he's doing is using as little fuel as possible while still trying to maintain the pace.
Juan Montoya comes around a slower car. Helio Castro Neves already has, as now, as we suggested, the leaders start to encounter traffic.
And Paul, on the last lap before they got to traffic, Castro Neves and Montoya turned the 2 quickest race laps at 60 flat. So these guys are pushing extremely hard. The fuel load's getting lighter, and these guys aren't letting off at all. The cheerleading from Chip Ganassi is now driving not only Montoya forward, but Castro Neves is responding to that push.
Tony Kanaan was able to get around Cristiano D'Amata for 16th. We're back with Michael Andretti. He's 9th. We really expected Michael to come forward along with Franchitti. But he sits now, I think identified him as 9th. I meant 14th.
And Paul, this is surprising. Last week, the Newman Haas team tested back at Mid-Ohio with Michael. They had some new pieces from Swift for their car, and Michael went under the existing track record. Michael said they finally felt comfortable that they had gotten a handle with these Firestone tires that have worked so well for them on the ovals, bringing Michael's first win this year back at St. Louis. But the road courses have been a struggle, and yet they've come here and they're still struggling. So they still haven't quite found the key to get the Swift Firestone combination working to the way they'd like it.
As most of the field comes onto the pit straight, it's still Helio Castro Neves and Juan Montoya at the front of the field, as the rest of them simply try to find racing room. We'll be back after this message and a word from your ABC station. We're back in Portland, but down the coast in the city by the bay, they're getting fired up for the X Games. Coverage begins on ESPN on the 27th of June, and then ABC coverage fires up on the 3rd of July. So make sure you're ready to go for the X Games. If you haven't seen it, it's worth a view. Helio Castro Neves, then Juan Montoya. Nothing changes at the front of the field as you ride with P.J. Jones.
And Paul, you can see his head loaded solidly against that left rest. You'll see him snap the wheel back to the right here. Watch his head shift the other direction. See his head lean right up against that rest again at just over 3 Gs through the sweeping right-hander onto the back straightaway.
In these first 26 laps of competition, Mario Franchitti has made an early move, but now he's caught behind Jimmy Vasser and hasn't been able to get past in this kind of ongoing circulating battle for 7th place. And Michael Andretti is still sitting back in 4th place trying to work on Roberto Moreno. Now there's Adrian Fernandez. Fernandez is running 6th, and this is a change for him this race.
Well, it is, Paul. Finally, they got hold of a 99 Renard chassis. Remember, the first 7 races of this year, they've been running what we've called Frankenstein, the 97, 98, 99 combination of parts. But finally, this weekend, the bride of Frankenstein has arrived. Adrian so far has been very happy. They did no testing. In fact, he didn't set in the car for the first time until Friday morning practice.
Well, with 27 laps complete, Jan Bikus, how close are we to pit stops?
Well, you would think, Paul, if you want to make a 2-stop race, you have to wait until lap 32. But we understand that Gilles de Ferran, who is now in 3rd place, will be on to pit road one more time around the track, and then he'll be in on pit road. I would think that would be too early to make it in 2 stops. So we may see some 3-stop strategies here today.
Leaders starting to close again on slower traffic. That's Robbie Gordon just ahead of Helio Castroneves. Gordon had a quick excursion off course and then back on. Again, with all that expansive grass, plenty of opportunity to be a little bit braver, take a little deeper, and not pay nearly as dearly for it. Helio Castroneves, 3 years in the sport. Still looking for that elusive first victory, but he's been oh so close this year. Been a terrific year for this young man. Richie Hearn decided to come in lap 28. Castroneves, under braking, gets around Robbie Gordon. Now Montoya has to deal with Gordon.
And that's just the sort of break Helio was looking for, because it's going to be tough for Montoya to get him unless he gets him right here, Paul, in this next left-hander. And it looks like Gordon let Montoya through, but look at the distance that Helio Castroneves was able to pull out and extend his lead, because he was able to get Robbie right at the end of the pit straightaway. And unfortunately, Montoya had to follow him all the way through the back section of the course.
Crew already beginning to think at Walker Racing, putting equipment out for Gilles de Ferran, currently running in 3rd. We'll keep track of him. That certainly would predict to a degree what the leaders are capable of doing. Back onto the pit straight again for the leaders. You ride with de Ferran now, and he heads down onto the pit road. Jan Bikus is there.
And they're not expecting to make any changes, Paul, but I am surprised that they would be here so early. You would think that they would try and make this on 2 stops. Maybe they're going to try and save some fuel later in the race.
Wait on the fuel now.
Waiting for the fuel. They have not changed the regulations. You can do that.
Okay, go. All clear.
13.3. A nice stop, but I wonder if it's too early.
Of course, all these drivers and crews very apprehensive about the situations that they've had with injuries in the pits. Last several races, you see that anyone over the wall now, officials included, by the way, have to have a helmet on. And they have been warned and warned and warned again to be very, very careful when you make those stops. Now, Richie Hearn was back into the pits, and when he came in because he was responding to a black flag for a violation of the pit speed limit, which is 50 miles an hour, and it's an absolute 50 miles an hour. That will take you back to battle back in the field, 10th place. Max Pappas has it. Moore's trying to get it. There we are. Here comes Pappas. Roberto Moreno right up behind Greg Moore. And Moore's teammate, Carpentier, you can just get a glimpse of him there heading down the straightaway, sitting ahead of Pappas.
And Paul, as Jan mentioned, this might be a real strategy of fuel, because the difference between 1.7 miles per gallon and 1.8 miles per gallon is the difference between going 30 laps and almost 32 laps. Now, if you want to get to the end of this race, you're going to have to extend it to at least lap 32 or beyond in order to make it a 2-stop race. So these guys, even though they might be trying to conserve fuel, are still attacking as much as they can, and it looks like our leader is
well,
just
there goes
the
Castroneves. He takes the turn down the pit road. This is the 30th lap for him. He would be completing the 31st. Gary Gerould is there.
Well, we thought it might be 2 laps from now, but they've elected to play it on the conservative side. We'll see how they perform now. We'll see if Montoya elects to take the lead and stay out, or if he comes in. Montoya crew is right behind. These two guys are pitted right together. No changes for Castroneves. Little problem on the right rear. Now they come down off the jacks. Disengage, and he pulls away in about 13.5 seconds. We wait now for Montoya as well.
So as Montoya's crew lays out, he has been radioed, told to come in on the next time around. To see if he follows our orders. I think everybody's being a little careful at reading the fuel left off of the computer, because we've had some rather glaring examples of that computer being wrong with that factor. Brian Herta on his way in. Jan Beekes?
Yes, I remember Brian Herta said that last year he made 3 stops here and it cost him the race. This should be late enough to where this could be a 2-stop race. They're not planning on making any changes for Brian. Let's get to Gary.
And Montoya glides in for his first stop. Boy, he comes in here not like a rookie, but like a veteran driver. He's only 23 years of age. This is only his 8th championship car event. Let's go back to Jan.
Brian Herta is now getting his tires, Gary. So far, their stop is going according to plan as well. 13.2, so a little bit faster than DeFerrin, and he was a couple laps later.
Montoya came flying out of the pits and then didn't make the turn in the festival curve. Now he has to pull up and stop. They can go through that short circuit, but they do have to stop before they go on.
It didn't look like he came to a complete stop. There is a flag man there, and they want to make sure they gain no advantage in time or position. I didn't see him come to a complete stop. It's easy to get tricked coming out of the pits, Paul. You're on cold tires. All of a sudden, you've got 35 gallons of fuel. The car handles very differently. That's just the brake that Castroneves needed.
Black flag just put out for Patrick Carpentier. Again, the notice of pit speed violation. The pit speed limit, 50 miles an hour. I agree with you, Parker. I think if anything, you know, I can remember one time pulling that myself on a 4-way stop. I also remember paying the ticket.
Well, we'll see if the CART officials agree or if they just waved him through. But don't you think, Paul, during that round of pit stops, everybody is being a little more careful than we've seen all year long in their stops?
And the officials now saying that it's a wave through for Montoya as we keep an eye on Christian Fittipaldi. Came in the pits in 4th place.
Go, go, go. Watch your speed, Christian. Watch your speed. Watch your speed.
Not only watch your speed in the pits, but here's where Montoya got in trouble. Came out of the pits very fast and then couldn't get it stopped for that first corner.
We see Christian lock a brake there, Paul, just as he makes that first right-hand turn, sideways coming off the exit.
So with a little bit of moisture that's out here, the cold tires, well, a lot of things can happen if you come slamming into that corner too quickly. Michael Andretti has not yet pitted. Montoya is the leader of the race. Gary Gerould?
Oh, just a quick update on those pit speed violations. Yesterday morning in a hour 15-minute practice session, 75 minutes, there were 14 violations recorded and drivers brought in. CART officials have dropped the speed limit to 50, and they are really cracking down on it. And these teams have got to be very aware of that.
Well, Michael Andretti now becomes the last to stop. And Parker, we're talking lap 34 here.
Well, that's the fuel mileage game.
Michael, reset the fuel meter. Okay, tires are done. Hold it. Just hold it there. He's going okay. Just hold it. Go, go, go.
Oh, Paul.
Oh, no.
I don't understand.
Michael killed it coming out of the pits. They're going to have to drag him back.
Let's get it. We'll pull him back. Let's pull him back. Get the starter. Pull the starter out. Get him back here.
The car's not rolling, obviously, Paul. There, they've now got it rolling again.
So whatever advantage
What happened to the engine? What did the telemetry say?
And the reason Michael's asking that
yet. All we can do is try to restart it.
is you could see that he had spun the rear tires, he had it up on the limiter, and then all of a sudden the engine just died.
Got it plugged in. Here it goes.
It starts. Here's where it died before. Now this time Michael gets away. We'll take a look at the Kmart telemetry as he comes out of the pits. Both acceleration and brake coming off of accelerometers, which explains some of that jumpiness. And Michael finally comes back up to speed. At the front of the field now, with that stop and everyone having made their stop, Juan Montoya is the leader. Castroneves came out in second place and came out 6 seconds behind the leader. Gil de Fer in third, Tracy fourth, Bryan Herta fifth. No change. We'll be back. This Toyota Spotlight focuses on Juan Montoya and his radio communications while he rides in front.
Don't give up on Castro. Keep on him. Still +8. You're still +8 coming up on traffic. Okay, pit now, pit for fuel.
And when he came out from that pit stop, here's where he got in trouble. Lit the tires, went through the shortcut. Despite all of that, he comes away with a 6-second lead on second place now, Gil de Fer. And you say, what happened to Helio Castroneves? Well, in just one lap, he fell to fourth position behind Paul Tracy, and now is coming in. The report is there's a header problem on that car.
Now, Paul, he was losing almost 10 seconds a lap. You could see his frustration. What a disappointment for this Hogan Racing team.
Gary Gerould, he's coming toward you.
Well, the last 2 times by, you could clearly hear it sounded like an exhaust or header problem. Carl Hogan just been banging on the scoring stand in frustration. Castroneves is in. The body work will come off. He shut the engine down. And this team that has consistently been so fast is also consistently plagued by tough luck. We'll wait and see what happens.
And you think about it, same side of the engine that they had the turbocharger problem with earlier this year that had a similar dire effect.
We talked about it at Milwaukee, Paul, in the beginning, looking for the front. The pressure's on the engineer, the driver, and the crew does its job. But as the driver achieves that success, then it starts to put the pressure on the preparation. And then you start looking for all the little things that may or may not go wrong. And it's happened again today.
Mauricio Guzman's been battling with Roberto Moreno. Just got around Roberto, but Roberto's remaining back in this fight. Mark Blundell would normally be in that car. He expected to be back here at Portland in the cockpit. Doctor said no, he's not ready yet. Now they're saying the race at Road America, which is 3 weeks away, Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, will be Mark Blundell's first time back in the car. But Roberto Moreno, every ride he's given the car, has scored in the points. We'll look at Roberto's Kmart telemetry.
Slowest portion of the track here, Paul, down to just over 45 miles an hour. Long, sweeping, hard right-hander. Lots of G's there. And then a quick transition back to the left. You rarely have time to rest here at Portland. It's very, very demanding physically and mentally. Even through this back section, even though it's called the back straightaway, you're constantly turning. The drivers only have about 1.5 to 2 seconds of forward visibility at 190 miles an hour.
Further forward in the field now, Bryan Herta, Adrian Fernandez, Dario Franchitti all lined up together. As Franchitti continues his charge forward with the pit stops, he was able to pick up another couple of positions. Now rides in 6th. And the crew has sent Helio Castroneves back onto the race course. We'll keep an eye on him.
Paul, as he pulled away, they changed the electronics, but that sound was still there. It's an ominous sound. I don't think he'll go more than a lap, and he'll probably be back.
Yeah, electronics doesn't account for noise most of the time.
Paul, as it went by our position, we heard the same sound. It sounded like a small block Chevy on open pipes they're going by, and I'm sure he'll be right back into the pits.
Not a bad sound, but not one you want here.
Not with the Champ car.
Yeah, look, he's in real trouble. I'm sure he'll bring that car in after this lap. But another terrible report for Carl Hogan's team. They've tried so hard, done so well, and then they have situations like this develop. One of these days, they're going to do it, and you're going to see a dance on that stand like you've never seen before. Coming toward the carousel, we'll watch and see if he's actually going to turn in. And yeah, he does. Helio Castroneves is going to bring the car back in. Juan Montoya is still the leader. Mauricio Guzman there on the pit road as well. Montoya, de Ferran, Tracy Herta, the top of the order. Going back, take a look at Fernandez in 5th place with Franchitti working on him. Herta's just ahead of him. .43 laps now complete. Good start on this race. Drivers were admonished several times about being very careful on the start. They were. They got through it clean, with the exception of one little tap that didn't really matter. Everyone continued on.
And really, the two Team Green teammates took advantage of that start, with Tracy moving from 6th to 4th and Dario also making a big move. So they were clean, but they were crafty, made the most of it.
The race has been incident-free, but there has been from time to time a sprinkle of rain. Up at 3rd place now, Paul Tracy. Montoya, de Ferran, and Paul Tracy. That, of course, is, there's Tracy. That was Franchitti. Here's Paul. As he closes on some slower traffic now, and here comes that battle, Herta, Fernandez, Franchitti. So for the moment, everyone seems to have found a place to sit and find out where they're going to go to try to win this race, the Budweiser 200 at Portland. Race in the Kart FedEx Championship Series on ABC Sports will come to you on the 11th of July from the beautiful Road America circuit in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. It's a Texaco Haviland 200. Richie Hearn just got himself in trouble and off the edge of the course, has not yet restarted. They have not elected to go to full course caution. Right now it is still only local cautions for the Hearn car. It looks to be in a fairly safe position, but you would like for him to be able to get restarted as soon as possible. Still looking at race control to see whether or not they're going to make a decision. Juan Montoya is still the leader, followed by de Ferran, Tracy, Herta. Nothing has changed in the order of the lineup. Now, here's what got Richie Hearn into trouble. Hearn, the red car. Quick little spin, and with that, the pace car heads out onto the track. The track goes to a full course out yellow. Everyone will line up behind the pace car because finally they determined Richie couldn't get it restarted, and with not being able to get it restarted, that was just too precarious a position for his car. Whoa! Heavy braking to get around the emergency gear as they come into that corner. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Helio Castroneves, how hard is it to deal with this frustration almost at every event all of a sudden?
It's tough. I mean, we've been working so hard. We've been so close the whole race, and also this weekend we have electrical as well, and happen again in the race. I mean, my smile on the face is starting to go away because that's definitely the bad luck.
Was this car good enough to win this race?
Yes, it was great. I was handling there. I was saving fuel because I know this race is kind of a fuel strategy. The tire was handling well. I mean, what can I say?
That's the question. What can he say? Jan?
Well, another guy who's climbing from his car is Mauricio Guzman. You also drive a Mercedes. Also some kind of problem with boost?
Yeah, I lost boost, and the temperature on the boost controller just went crazy. There is some pink on the boost lines, perhaps, because I lost boost completely, so power was gone.
He also said it was not the same thing that happened to Helio. Thanks.
So Mauricio Guzman and Helio Castroneves both out of competition as we approach the halfway point. We're going to put you on board with Richie Hearn on the pit straight. He heads for turn 1, Parker.
185 miles an hour in 6th gear, downshifting, hard on the brakes. Whoa, Paul, usually that's caused by just having a little bit too much rear brake bias as you turn in. It just snaps the car around.
But then as the pace car came out, here came Al Unser Jr. into the corner, locked the brakes up, missed Richie, and went to the left side of the safety truck. We're looking carefully at maybe Tarso. Cars are quite close together. Only difference is the helmet. So those two situations come up with the full course caution now going out as we're at the halfway point. We'll be back after this message and a word from your ABC station.
The Budweiser 200 on ABC Sports. Brought to you by Brewery Fresh Budweiser, official beer of CART. This Bud's for you. And Craftsman, a line of 1,800 hand tools made in America, guaranteed forever, only at Sears.
Back at the Budweiser 200 at Portland International Raceway, Paul Page with Parker Johnstone in the booth, Jan Beekes, Gary Gerould down in the pits. We're getting ready to come off of this full course caution. A couple of things have occurred, though, as you watch Gil de Ferran, who has stayed the course and now sits in second place with the retirement of Helio Castroneves. P.J. Jones has been kind of the center of attention for a while. There he is as you look from the nose on his car. They reported a possible electrical fire. Jan Beekes?
Well, it turns out it may have been a fuel fire. He had just come in for a pit stop. They fueled it up. There was a little residual methanol that did come out around the fuel buckeye. That's where they fuel the car. They said it caught fire. They brought him back in. Everything's okay. He's underway. Also, Scott Pruitt has been into the pits with engine problems. He is out of the race.
And so P.J. Jones, by coming into the pits, it changes his physical position on the race course. He was just in front of Juan Montoya for a while. And Montoya, oh, Montoya loses it coming off of the corner as they're ready to come back to green, but the yellow flies. Now, can everybody else get back into order? They were ready to go green. They had said that the acceleration point would be back coming off of that corner. Montoya lost the back end, spun it, got it back under control.
Hang on.
And I think what's happened...
Green, they never win green. Yellow.
The conversation that Montoya and Ganassi are having is whether the green was ever out, so could people legitimately pass him, Paul? You can see he stands on the throttle coming out of the final corner, and the car just snaps around on him on cold tires with full fuel.
Got it back under control quickly. Again, that's back at that acceleration point. You can see the starter up in the corner of your picture. He was ready to go green, and had withdrawn the yellow, but had not yet presented the green flag to them.
So as he unleashes 925 horsepower.
That's from the onboard.
And although he lost it, Paul, that was a great bit of driving.
Gas it, gas it, gas it.
I don't like it, Paul, but you saw what happened. There's a bump there just as you come off the corner, and he got on the throttle just as he hit the bump. That was enough to upset the back of the car and turn around. But what was significant about that is he stood on the throttle to keep it spinning around. If he would have gone to the brake pedal, he would have backed it into the wall. So now they've got to get reshuffled, figured out if there was passing under the yellow, because we saw him go by one of the team green cars there, I think of Paul Tracy. They'll have to resort this out now.
Well, let's get a further update on this because there's some very interesting questions that are coming to mind here. Jan Beekes?
Well, I just checked with Derek Walker, who, of course, is the team owner for Gil de Ferran. I said, has CART talked to you at all about having to go back behind Montoya? He said, no, not at all. That is not the case. And I would say if a guy spun in front of you, even if it's a caution, you can go by. And I think that that's what CART's going to go with.
Well, that certainly would be the position you would take if it were a local yellow. The question is going to be the timing as to whether or not they were back to racing or if he had actually answered the flag at the appropriate position, even though the flag had not yet been displayed. That'll be an interesting thing to shake out. We'll be back. The CART officials did pretty quick decision-making, repositioned Montoya, and then restarted the race. They actually put Montoya back behind Gil de Ferran. He's in front now. Here's how that happened. Montoya from second position. De Ferran takes him way over to the pit wall. And then Montoya jumps out, sweeps wide, comes in ahead of him going into the festival curve, takes the lead, and pulls away.
And there's no doubt Montoya's a master of restarts. He didn't let De Ferran get away, but watch what he does here, Paul. Drafts up behind De Ferran, goes to the outside, and outbreaks him on the outside going into the festival corners. What a brilliant move that was.
And the decisions, as we go back to live action, of the officials was to place Montoya in second place. They didn't, in doing that, really account for the fact that he had fallen further back. And then you heard Chip Ganassi on the radio say, gas it, gas it, gas it, and he got back up. And that's pretty well where they put him, in second position. Now look at the interval. Back to DeFerrin.
And Paul, significantly, as we look at Montoya and DeFerrin and the rest of the group, look at the marbles on the right side of the track building up there. That's going to play a significant role in attempting to pass in the closing laps that we've got with 42 to go.
And as you look at Bryan Herta and look at Franchitti coming to the inside as they deal with slower traffic, obviously Fernandez and Franchitti have both been able to get around Bryan Herta. They did that on the first of the 2 restarts. So that makes the order, as we see it, Montoya, DeFerrin, Tracy, and Fernandez. Jan?
Well, you're talking about Gilles DeFerrin and now how fast Montoya has pulled away. As soon as Montoya passed him, Derek Walker called him on the radio and told him to take a different position on the fuel. Remember, they pitted earlier than anyone else, so as soon as they lost the lead, they decided they still have to save fuel. Montoya, because he pitted later, would not have to do that.
Well, and the officials are also saying that they have now issued a warning to DeFerrin that if he pulls that again, that drifting way to the inside, it would constitute blocking and he would be penalized. 57 laps are complete, 98 the scheduled distance.
And on that last lap, Paul, Montoya turned the fastest lap of the race at a 60 flat. So he has got the fuel up and he is charging.
Bryan Herta separated from Franchitti by 2 slower cars now. Franchitti in 5th. Fernandez has been able to pull a bit away from this battle. Fernandez sitting in 4th. That's Mimo Gidley that sits just ahead of Franchitti. Currently runs 6th place in his first race in a champ car. Reports that P.J. Jones is off course. Again, a precarious position. Will this necessitate full course yellow? Looking up at the starter from our position as we watch P.J. Jones from his onboard camera.
Just motion. Wave your hand. No, nobody's moving.
Yellow flag flies only in that area.
But that's in a terrible position to be in, Paul.
Well, that was the same position that we saw earlier with Richie Hearn, and they decided to go full course yellow to get him out of there. Leaders have now come by first time.
If anybody makes a mistake on the entry to that corner, they'll turn right into where PJ's sitting, which is how PJ got there in the first place. And we've seen that happen in the past. You can see the turn workers motioning to the drivers to stay to the inside.
And now they go full course yellow. We kind of expected that. They were firing up the pace car and looking anxious. And in order to get him physically out of there, they're going to have to tow him out with a tow strap. And so that sets up the same situation in many ways that we saw before. Now, the report from the pits is that this, the 58th lap, may be the appropriate stopping point for the leaders, for both Montoya and for DeFerrin, and they are now both on the pit road. At the same time, we're getting stopped.
Well, Gilles DeFerrin will get here first because he's at pit in, and Montoya will get there later.
Gary Gerould?
Oh, we had a guy fall down, but I think he's okay, Gary.
Watching Juan Montoya as they change rubber and fuel him up. No changes on the setup of the car. They're holding him. Oh, they got a problem on the left front. They got to go back up on the jacks. Now he comes down. Hose is cleared, but DeFerrin beats him out. Tracy beats him out.
Yeah, you saw both DeFerrin and Tracy come by Montoya. Franchitti now rolls as well. He'll drop into 4th place as Jimmy Vasser comes in.
And that's why that teamwork is so important in the pits, Paul. These guys are all so good out on the racetrack that it's come down to that precision pit work in order to try to get the pass done in the pit lane.
Rest of the field, for the most part, did come into the pits on the same stop. Jimmy Vasser got out ahead of Fernandez and Herta on that stop as well. So once again, the position shuffle under a full course yellow as they struggle to remove a car from the position it's in on the first turn. And Portland, the NHRA Sears Craftsman Nationals. From Gateway in St. Louis, coverage on the 4th of July. Jonas Friat, 320-mile-an-hour top fueler. That's where to watch. Well, while we're still under the full course caution, it gives us a chance to take a look at a couple of situations. This is on board Gilles de Ferran, Parker.
Watch the back of Juan's car go over the bumps right there, Paul, as he stands on the throttle. I tell you, Gilles had a lot of faith in Montoya keeping that car to the inside as he stood on it looking for the green flag. Instead, he got the yellow.
And so with now 60 laps actually complete on the course, and the field going to go another lap at least while they get the course cleaned up. Here's the recap. 3 different leaders, 4 changes, and one very interesting one when de Ferran took Montoya almost over to the pit wall in pursuit. Quite a few out of the race, which is a bit of a surprise for this first natural terrain road course of the season. And the most important of those, Helio Castroneves, who was the early leader, who had a great run.
And Paul, that last round of pit stops, the winners, Franchitti got around Fernandez, Vassar got around Herta, Pappas and Moore both got around Christian Fittipaldi. De Ferran and Tracy obviously got by Montoya with his problem, and Cristiano D'Amata was able to get around Tony Kanaan through pit work.
So now anticipating them to come back. The field still trying to bunch up and get into position behind the pace car. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Well, we talked about for Gilles de Ferran's pit stop that there was a Walker crew member who had slipped at the back, and it was Mike Cicerelli, and he said, well, I just kind of lost my footing. I went up to get the front tire, and we were in a hurry, and I slipped, but there was no problem whatsoever. Everyone is fine. And, of course, they're very cautious down here because one of their team members, Dave Stevens, was hurt quite severely. Thankfully, nothing broken, but that was in St. Louis. They expect to see him back soon, and they send his or well wishes to him. Hope he'll be back soon.
And a reminder, Ty Manso, who was working on Michael Andretti's car on his first stop at Milwaukee, had a probably the most serious accident we have seen in years when he actually passed underneath the left rear wheel of Michael's car, and in doing so suffered some rather severe bruising. But the good news is he was out of the hospital almost immediately and is in good shape. He's not here this weekend. The crew said, you know what, why don't you take the weekend off? Ty, hurry up and get back and join us. We all wish you well. Now, watching for the green flag to come out as the field comes down with de Ferran in front. Remember, he'd been warned about taking people over too far.
And look at Montoya, Paul. He pulled up right behind Paul Tracy and outbrakes him going into the festival curves. Another brilliant restart for Juan Montoya.
Well, they bunch up behind the Montoya right now. Montoya slides into second place in the festival curves. Chasing now, Gilles de Ferran. De Ferran. Then the 2 team green cars, Tracy and Franchitti. Adrian Fernandez drops into 5th. Jimmy Vassar is back there too. Jimmy's been steadily working his way forward.
And remember how quickly Montoya was able to put distance on de Ferran after that last restart. He's pushing him very, very hard, but all these drivers at this point, Paul, have to make a significant increase in the fuel mileage they've gotten so far in order to get to the end of the race by almost 15%.
Oh, and Tarso Marquez in trouble off the course. In another one of his rides with the Penske team. That is in a Penske. Little Al is in the Lola. Back at the front looking from the Honda Helicam. Montoya closes down in the first turn. Tries to get a nose to the inside of de Ferran. Tracy and Franchitti, once again the 2 teammates in that nose-to-tail situation, ride 3rd and 4th.
You know what's interesting here, Paul? Fuel mileage won't be a guess for the first 4 cars. They're all powered by Honda power plants. De Ferran, Montoya, Tracy, and Franchitti. So it really comes down amongst this top 4 of just who can drive the hardest with the fuel lean back the most.
And race control now reporting they're taking a look at Montoya and the tapes of that last restart to determine whether or not, in their view, there might have been blocking by Montoya. I want to take you back. You remember Marquez was off. This is the view of Marquez just ahead from Michael Andretti. Oh, and that's how Marquez got off. Michael able to keep it going. And Tarso, of course, was able to get it fired and going as well. Back at the front, still de Ferran and Montoya. Here comes Michael through. Michael's still not having one of his great days, and they came here with truly high hopes that once they got to these road course events, especially on the natural terrain, that he would be very strong. Back in second place, Montoya, half a second behind the leader. Here comes the Team Green combination. Tracy, then Franchitti. Need we remind you that now they say they have talked, they know how to deal with this situation. Race is not won here at the 64th lap. It's won at the 98.
But this is a different situation than we've seen in the past. This is Dario trailing Paul, sort of like St. Louis Paul, but where they've gotten in trouble are situations just like that in the past. Dario trying to put the pressure on Paul Tracy, looking down the inside, but now he's falling under attack from Adrian Fernandez.
Fernandez, fifth place, sits just behind. Nothing changes at the front with DeFerrin and Montoya.
And at this point, DeFerrin is quicker than anybody else in the field, Paul. I don't know if they've actually changed their strategy, maybe realizing they can't get to the end.
They're telling us that we might be walking on that first lap.
That's Barry Green talking to Paul Tracy. Apparently they're getting some indication that they think Paul might be holding Dario up. I recognize that voice, Paul.
You've heard that voice in your ear before. So the officials have been very strong on blocking. So obviously they're watching everybody. And what Barry Green was saying, that they're reevaluating Tracy for possible blocking on the start. Here comes Tracy. And Tracy goes back as Franchitti comes around just that easily and quickly. Officials say that Montoya's situation, no, it was not blocking. We look down from the Honda Helicam, and we'll be back after this message and a word from your ABC station. Back at the Portland International Raceway, the Budweiser 200. Here are the current standings with Gil DeFerrin out in front. Nothing has changed since we left you. Well, in a way it did. Christian Fittipaldi and Greg Moore have been battling back and forth. There was a pass for a moment. Fittipaldi passed and then was cautioned by the crew. You really need to save fuel and don't be hitting that acceleration, that go button to get around people. And so conserving fuel now, here is Christian, and he is behind Greg Moore. But it's begun to be once again a battle of how do you get this car to the finish given the fuel load that you have available. We'll start the reports with Jan Beekes.
Well, Paul, of course, these teams not only tell their drivers what to do, but they listen to everybody else's communications, and the Walker team knows that Paul Tracy has to save fuel. They know that everybody is in the same boat. They have called Gil, and they have said, look, everybody's saving fuel. Save fuel where you can. And they're saying there's some guys in particular that are in trouble, so go as fast as you can and save as much fuel as you can, and those two things are hard to do together. Gary?
Well, one of those guys that could be in trouble is Juan Montoya. He's been instructed to short shift to conserve fuel. Then they told him he's got to do a little better on the next lap. And we've just been informed by the crew that as of the moment, at the current pace he's running, he would be 1 lap or 2 miles short.
So now we're into, once again, a strategic battle between the pit crews trying to project the end of the race. Now just a little over 27 laps away, and the range of the fuel tank, given the power that they're capable of using, given the fuel economy that they have. We're going to watch the field come through here. You saw DeFerrin go through, and Montoya now with the two Team Green cars, Franchitti, then Tracy, and Fernandez. Here comes your leader on the pit straight, DeFerrin. Now we'll watch for the rest of the field.
And Paul, as I said at the top of the show, Dario Franchitti is one of the best in the business at going the fastest on the least amount of fuel. The thing I don't quite understand now is DeFerrin continues to pull away. He just ran a lap that's almost a second quicker than anybody else at this stage of the race. I don't know what they've got planned as far as fuel strategy, or they're just hoping for a yellow flag. But that's going to be a very interesting situation in the Walker pits.
Jan Beekes.
Well, the reason is that they haven't decided exactly what they're going to do. They are discussing their plan. And while they're discussing their plan, I would assume that means that Gil could be using a little more fuel than some of the others. So they're deciding, do we wait for some yellow? How much fuel do we save? They haven't definitively decided what they're going to do for Gil DeFerrin. That could be why he's running quicker.
Yeah, but that Derek Walker, the owner of the team, is a crafty old Scotsman. I'll tell you what, he is pretty good at figuring out how to get cars to the end of the race if the driver can get them in front.
Well, remember last race at Milwaukee, Paul Tracy was victorious because of some crafty strategy by the Australian Barry Green. I don't know if they're trying to hope for the same sort of circumstances that allowed DeFerrin to also take a checker under superior fuel strategy. We'll have to wait and see.
Greg Moore gets around Max Pappas for 7th place, while DeFerrin continues to lead, followed by Montoya, Franchitti, Tracy, Fernandez, and Jimmy Vasser. We'll be back. Back in Portland, all remains the same in the front. Don't forget the X Games are coming up. You'll have coverage on ABC and on ESPN. The X Games with a great extreme athletes from San Francisco. Well, Gil DeFerrin has a considerable lead, almost 6 seconds over 2nd place Juan Montoya, now extending it to 9 seconds. Dario Franchitti and Paul Tracy lie in 3rd and 4th, but getting to the end of this race may be the key to the game. We'll start with Gary Gerould.
The sleeper in this deal may be Adrian Fernandez in car number 40. They are telling him that he's getting 2.2 miles per gallon, and that's spot on what he needs to get to the checkered flag without a stop. So if Adrian can maintain that pace and the 4 cars in front of him have the problem, hey, Fernandez might be the guy who gets there first. Jan?
Well, Gary, you talk about strategy, you talk about mileage. Derek Walker has done the opposite of what you would expect. He's told Gil DeFerrin, pick up the heat. We'll give you some more fuel. We want a bigger lead. I'm not exactly sure what they're thinking other than they may get a yellow later in the race, but they are not trying to save as much fuel as many other people. That's why he's yanking out a big lead. Derek Walker wants a big lead, not as concerned about fuel. That's very curious.
Is he trying to get enough of a lead just to be able to make the stop and get back out still in front?
That's what he's doing, Paul. The last lap he turned was the 2nd quickest race lap that we've seen so far, and he's pulling out about a 2nd a lap. We've got 22 laps to go. If he can continue on this pace, he'll have 30 to 35 second lead. It's going to be really close to get into the pits and back out in front of this group.
Now to 10.5 seconds. Montoya behind DeFerrin. Franchitti, Tracy, Fernandez, we told you about him. There's Roberto Moreno, who's having a great day, now runs in 10th place. He's really only 22 seconds behind the lead of the race. As he continues his replacement services, we watch the Kmart telemetry for Mark Blundell due back in the cockpit when ABC Sports is on the air again with the CART FedEx Championship Series at Road America at Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin.
And he's in a very difficult position, Paul. It's hard to come in after the season started. He's gotten very limited testing, but everyone on the team says that he fit right in. He's worked with the engineers. He's got great technical feedback, and you can see the results and how it's starting to pull this Pac West team forward.
Interesting now, Chip Ganassi, team owner for the Target Chip Ganassi Racing, now telling Montoya, hey, why don't you conserve a little more fuel? Montoya, of course, is thinking, they're pulling away from me out there. DeFerrin's disappearing. Jan Vikas?
Well, of course, that's going to be the strategy of the day. And many people say, well, how come every one of these races comes down to fuel? Why doesn't CART give them more fuel? That's not the problem. There is fuel down here on pit road in these fuel tanks. The idea is to make the fewest possible stops on pit road. And with a 50-mile-per-hour speed limit, the penalty for stopping nowadays is huge.
Vasser, Greg Moore, Roberto Moreno. This is the battle for 8th. Closest fight on the circuit right now.
And we know that Jimmy Vasser's also having to conserve fuel. We could see Christian Fittipaldi a half lap ago go right by him, and now he's got Greg Moore handling him up, Paul.
Greg Moore comes to the inside, darts around, picks off Vasser. Moreno closes in behind Vasser. Vasser's under attack by Moreno. Moreno locks him up, but keeps it going. Pappas now closes in. Pappas closes in. Andretti is right there. Andretti just getting around D'Amata. Now here comes Moreno on the front stretch, making his move on Vasser. Slides past as they head into the festival curves. And Moreno picks off another position.
And Paul, when you see drivers going by one another as easily as they're going by Jimmy on the straightaway, that means he's either got it leaned all the way out or he's also got some sort of problem, because that is not a normal place to pass for competitive cars here at Portland.
Makes you wonder what's going on with Max Pappas. You see him there just ahead of Michael Andretti. He was 8th on the 70th lap and has now dropped back to 11th, and it was only 4 laps later when he got there. Now we're approaching the 80th lap of the race, 98th the scheduled distance. front of the field. It is still Gil de Ferran, now by 14 seconds ahead of Juan Montoya. But right behind Montoya, two very hungry drivers in the persons of Dario Franchitti and Paul Tracy. We'll be back. For the Budweiser 200, Portland International Raceway, you ride with the Christian Fittipaldi. The leader is still Gil de Ferran. Nothing's changed. He continues to pull away. Montoya is working a gas conservation approach with his methanol fuel and is sitting now 19 seconds back as Fittipaldi works on Bryan Herta.
And Paul, right now, de Ferran's pulling out between 1 second to 2 seconds a lap. We've got 16 laps to go. He's got just over a 19-second lead. We figure he's going to have to build it over 30 seconds in order to come in, get down to 50 miles an hour, get the splash and go, and get back out in front of Montoya. It's going to be extremely close, even at the pace that he's running.
As you can see by the leaderboard upper left, this is a battle for 6th place with Herta and Fittipaldi. Back up to 2nd place. 19 seconds back from de Ferran is Montoya. Gary Gerould?
As hard as it is for this rookie driver to rein it in, he's been doing a good job, we're told, in the last 2 or 3 laps, and he's hitting the fuel projection they need to make it. They say it's still going to be very, very close, but at least he is doing the job. The question then becomes, what happens to de Ferran? Will he, in fact, have to come for the splash? Jan?
Well, I think that we now know that de Ferran will have to stop unless we have a yellow. That's why they're trying to yank out a big lead for de Ferran. But let's also consider he is on Goodyear tires. This is the best showing we've seen so far of Goodyear tires. When they tested here, they said every single set that Goodyear brought, they shredded in 15 laps. They decided not to go more conservative. They brought the same tires because they said, when there's rubber on the racetrack, we think these tires will work. And it turns out they guessed exactly right.
Christian Fittipaldi just got around Bryan Herta for 6th place. Well, if de Ferran is going to come in under the green, he's got a 20-second lead. Last time that they passed through the pits under green, it took them about 35 seconds to make it in and out of the pits with the speed limit. We'll be back with more at Portland after this.
Brought to you by FedEx, proud sponsor of the FedEx Championship Series. Honda, proud sponsor of the 1999 FedEx Championship Series. And Firestone, America's tire since 1900.
We're back at Portland International Raceway. Paul Page with Parker Johnstone. Michael Andretti just in and out of the pits. Indications are that Roberto Moreno may have to come in as well. These are all necessary fuel stops for these cars. Nothing's changed at the top of the order, though. There's your leader, Gil de Ferran, now 22.5 seconds ahead of 2nd place Montoya. De Ferran on
3, run hard.
That's Derek Walker talking to his driver, Gil de Ferran. Jan Beekes?
His pit board now says Gil L2, and that means that in 2 laps, bring it in for fuel.
Oh, this is going to be fascinating. We're going to be able to take you to the checkered flag, into the race and everything without commercial at this point. And de Ferran coming in 2 laps. He won't need a full stop, which is where we got that 35-second time from pit in to pit out. He'll only need to be hooked up a very short while. Won't need anything else in terms of tires, though he could take them if he wants them. But it's going to be so close now with just 23 seconds ahead of Montoya.
And when he comes in, Paul, he's going to need 10, 11 gallons of fuel. The problem is he'll come out behind, I think, Montoya, Franchitti, and some of the group. He'll be able to stay on full power while the others are conserving. Depends whether he gets fresh tires or not, but now that he's behind him, will he be able to get back through them? That's the question.
There's the question I have. Would you go fresh tires?
Well, you know, the problem is 10 gallons is going to go in very quickly. That's going to be right on the edge of what the guys can do. They can normally put tires on in about 7 to 8 seconds. It's going to put a lot of pressure on the crew. He might need those fresh Goodyears, though, in order to muscle his way back through that lead group.
Well, Gil de Ferran has followed the strategy, done everything he can, put the car in front, well in front. The instruction of his car owner, Derek Walker. It will now, very shortly, turn up to the crew itself. They can make or break this race in a single pit stop.
What a great story, Paul. The brunt of the Goodyear tire development and testing has fallen onto the shoulders of Gil de Ferran, plus the normal testing this team would normally do for Honda and also for the Renard chassis. It's really put a toll on this team, and look at how they have taken that and done so well. But now, will the strategy pay out? The last time around, the lead was right at 25 seconds. We've got 11 laps to go. He should be coming in on the next lap or the lap after, but I believe it'll be the next lap. We'll see how far he's been able to extend his lead. I think he's got another 1.5 seconds. The next lap he'll be in, Paul. That was Derek Walker telling Gil the next time through, it'll be time.
So as Gil de Ferran works on a very careful strategy, can he get in and out in time? Montoya 24.9 seconds back. Jan Vikas.
Well, the question was, would they put tires on? And the answer is no. They're only going to go for a quick splash. They don't care about tires. I think the Goodyears have grip, but it'll be awfully, awfully close. I think I agree with Parker. I think he would lose the lead when he comes in for the fuel.
And guys, the other guys behind de Ferran are starting to champ at the bit. Dario Franchitti on the radio say, let me know as soon as I can stand on it.
Well, what's going to make for an interesting is we're to the 10th lap from the finish. Very interesting circumstance, and it's all going to happen on a single pit stop. 26.8 seconds. The lead, Gil de Ferran over Montoya, and he stayed
around there. Pit next time.
So there's the word from Derek Walker. Next time around, Gil de Ferran comes in. Jan Vikas.
Well, remember, Paul, they go lap 3, lap 2, lap 1, and then they give him the in sign. So they are on schedule. He didn't stay out an extra lap. That's the way that they code the pit board.
Can you imagine the pressure that this pit crew feels right now?
And this is one of the most important laps he'll drive, Paul. He's got to get the most time out of this lap and then get back out as quickly as possible. We heard over the radio from the Pat Patrick team, they've told Adrian Fernandez to push very hard to try to make sure that he can beat de Ferran before he comes back out of the pit lane.
So Gil de Ferran should make the turn for the pit road. In doing so, Montoya will come off the corner very close to de Ferran as he comes out of the pits if everything goes perfectly. But Montoya is caught in traffic right now. And as he turns for the pit road,
we're going to give you
the game is
worth of fuel, no tires, and going to send you, and you're going to come out right where the leaders are going to be. So nice and steady, hold fire.
And it'll be very, very quick, as we said.
Get ready. Okay, go, 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 go.
5-4, but the answer will be at pit exit. Will he beat Montoya?
And he has to make absolutely sure he doesn't break that speed limit. Here comes Montoya off of the final corner. I don't think there's any question at all about it. He's hit the end of the pits. He's coming back up to full speed.
Montoya just coming past the snow. Go for it.
Robbie Gordon goes to the outside, and de Ferran being very, very careful. Montoya just now beginning his braking maneuver to get into the corner. Nice job for the Walker team. The guys did everything that was required of them.
Brilliant strategy, Paul. It played out perfectly, and they exceeded even what we thought they could do. He comes out of the pits clearly in front of Montoya, and now he's got enough fuel that he can keep it absolutely at full power, and he doesn't have to worry about anything except getting it to the checkered flag.
Now Franchitti starts to work on Montoya. 26.2 seconds, pit in to pit out for Gil de Ferran. A blazingly fast stop. Splash that fuel in and get him on his way. 8 to go now. Now Franchitti and Tracy certainly are going to think about what they can do with Montoya, but here, fuel conservation certainly at play.
What an amazing bit of strategy, Paul. I didn't think that he was going to be able to pull that off, and not only did he pull it off, he did it. It looked easy. Now, of course, everything was right on the edge, but what a great, great call by Derek Walker and the Valvoline team.
Years and years as a team manager, probably most notably for Penske. He knows how to play the game. There's no question about that.
And he's playing it very well.
+1 on fuel. Chip Ganassi's call to Montoya. +1.
And that means that he can now try to fight those guys off, Paul. He being Montoya.
Well, so they give Montoya a little bit of a chance. Fernandez, Franchitti, Tracy, all in the battle.
And on that last lap, Paul, Adrian Fernandez was able to get around Paul Tracy. So obviously he's got the power turned up. It looks like Tracy is still conserving fuel. And look at the interval that he's starting to pull away.
Yeah, the question with all of these guys, their stops are relatively identical. How good is their planning? How good is the computer? How about that guy that stands in the back of the pits and has to do all those calculations? Pressure's on him now.
The data acquisition guy is the guy that's really sweating bullets right now, Paul. The drivers are doing their jobs. The crews have done their jobs. Now it's really a matter of, has he done his calculations correctly? Will the car pick up every bit of methanol that they think it will? We'll see.
Well, when they crossed the line coming out of the pits, Montoya was 11 seconds behind DeFerrin. Of course, DeFerrin was still accelerating at that time, so losing a bit of ground to Montoya. Now they have stabilized right at 7 seconds from DeFerrin back to Montoya.
And a word of caution has gone back out to Montoya. He flirted with the magic number, was looking good. Now they're going to have to dial him back just a bit. So this race for second could be a nail-biter.
Oh, they're going to dial him back with Franchitti all over him.
And we just heard from Barry Green over the radio that they've told Dario exactly the opposite. They told Dario to go after Montoya. So Dario has played his fuel strategy correctly, and now we'll see if he's
5 to go.
And we'll see if he can make a move on Montoya with 5 laps to go.
So they give Franchitti the reins and let him run. Tracy works on Adrian Fernandez, and there is Herta with more following him. Some close fights here, all of which could be decided on fuel consumption and on the last lap.
On that last lap, as they came to the line, Paul, DeFerrin has slowed down about a second a lap from his earlier pace, where Montoya and Franchitti have both picked it up. Franchitti then just turning the 3rd quickest lap of the race with only 5 to go.
Slowed down a second a lap, 5 laps to go, and a 6-second lead. You ride with Montoya. That's Franchitti back there in 3rd. And here, starts the car. Franchitti loses some. That was a costly mistake. There's the interval. Leader just going out of the picture. Here comes Montoya and Franchitti.
And on that lap, DeFerrin went a little quicker than the previous lap, but they're still starting to close down on DeFerrin.
5.5 seconds, DeFerrin to Montoya. Rest of the interval you can see for yourself. Chip Ganassi, Montoya and Jimmy Vasser's car owner. Everything's done for you, Chip. It's now up to this guy.
And I think they're recalculating the calculations, Paul. I saw Juan's engineer, Morris Nunn, on the side looking down like he was recalculating the calculations that have been recalculated. They want to make sure they've got this exactly right.
Putting away the computers and calculators, going to pull out the abacus. Now with traffic. But the traffic does not become a factor. Franchitti still stays in pursuit, has an inside line here. He'll have to come out and duck in. Runs along Jourdain, and both clear Jourdain. Now they're back together again.
And that time, Paul, DeFerrin was able to pull the interval out back a couple of tenths, so he seems to be remaining at about the same pace now, between 5.9 to 6.1 seconds ahead of Montoya and Franchitti. And for Gilles DeFerrin at this point, Paul, you just want to make sure that if you have traffic, you work it carefully. You don't want to make any mistakes. He's got enough of a lead where he can give away a second and a half a lap without endangering his win. And this is when every piece in the car starts to feel a little loose. You hear sounds you've never heard before, and he just wants to make sure he drives as perfectly as he absolutely can.
Greg Moore was running just out of the top 10, dropped into the pits.
2 laps to go, slot 6. You're looking good.
Moore dropped into the pits for fuel, headed back out. Derek Walker talks to his driver every pass down the pit straight.
And we saw DeFerrin come out right behind Robbie Gordon after that last stop, and notice he hasn't pushed to try to get in front of Robbie. He's watching the interval. It's back down this last time to 5.8 seconds. He won't push to get in front of that traffic, Paul, because he's only got 2 laps to go, and he doesn't want to have to take the chance.
There's Derek Walker. Just one more message to give to his driver. That is that you're on your final lap. Montoya 5.8 behind. There goes Gordon. Here comes DeFerrin. Gordon is running 27th. Christian Fittipaldi dropped into the pits for a splash of fuel, is back out. White flag. Just
okay, white flag, white flag, white flag.
Just under 2 miles to go now for Gilles DeFerrin. The strategy may be about to pay off. The driver, the crew, the owner, they all did exactly what was demanded to win this day. Now all they have to do is make it through this final lap. Montoya crossed the line 5.2 seconds behind DeFerrin. Franchitti will be working on Montoya as they come on this final lap.
What a great Father's Day gift for this father of two. Gilles DeFerrin, a tremendous race car driver. Very, very intelligent young man. Also one of the nicest people you'd want to meet on the circuit. They've worked so hard and so long, and now it looks like all that effort in these Goodyear tires has come to fruition.
Without question, one of the nicer men on the circuit. A collection of really fine individuals anyway, but Gilles DeFerrin spends a lot of time with his fans, a lot of time with us, makes the final turn as he comes off the corner and weaves down to the inside. Checkered flag is there. DeFerrin is waving, and Gilles DeFerrin.
Great job, Gilles. Good job, Goodyears. Great job.
Gilles DeFerrin takes it. Montoya holds on for second. You're welcome, Gilles DeFerrin. Third career win. 50 races since his last win. Jan Beekes?
Well, Derek Walker is getting the congratulations. We'll try and jump in here. Derek, how nervous about that fuel strategy were you?
Well, we knew we couldn't make it to the end, so we just said we'll go for it, get a gap. The guys will do the rest, and that's what happened.
Congratulations. That was awesome.
Thank you. Great job.
So Gilles DeFerrin has taken the win. They come across the line in the same order we saw them go to the last lap, with DeFerrin, Montoya 4 seconds back, then Franchitti, Fernandez, Paul Tracy, and Brian Herta. We're going to try to establish a radio contract with Gilles DeFerrin if we can. We've never tried this before, so let's see how it works. Gilles DeFerrin, this is Paul Page. Congratulations.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. I'm very, very happy, man. It's been a couple of years, you know, and this is just fantastic. I can't quite describe.
When you came to that last pit stop, I imagine that created a lot of tension for both you and the crew.
For sure, you know, I mean, it was a very tense moment. It was hard to know if we had enough gap or not. You know, my puppy just went by here, and but you know, when I came out and Derek said to me, "Hey, you +7 or +8, whatever he was," I said, "Yeah, baby, this looks good."
Well, Derek Walker knew exactly what to do. We'll let you enjoy your victory here in the Budweiser 200. So there's Gilles DeFerrin. You saw him as he is rolling down now for his congratulations, his trophy, his moment on the podium, which will be shared with Juan Montoya and Dario Franchitti. So DeFerrin leads the most laps, and Montoya gets the extra point for the pole position. And we look through the unofficial order of results now. So the race is won on a great strategy by Derek Walker.
Unbelievable day for the Walker Racing team, Paul. You can see the exuberation from Gilles DeFerrin. What a great Father's Day present. Congratulations, my friend.
Derek Walker Racing and Gilles DeFerrin fielding 2 cars this race for the second time this year, comes up with the victory. We'll take a look at the point standings now with this finish as well, as DeFerrin just trying to find the winner's circle. Montoya still has the lead, but this battle in the points fight as we move to these road course segments, very tight indeed. In a week, they're at the Burke Lakefront Airport in Cleveland. Now our final Toyota Spotlight of the day is a look at this race run at Portland International Raceway.
Go, go, go.
So congratulations to Gilles DeFerrin on his 3rd win. This is Paul Page. For Parker Johnstone, Jan Beekes, and Gary Gerald, they're on the road courses now, and the action continues. Kart Today and coverage of the race at the Burke Lakefront Airport on ESPN. ABC Sports is online at ESPN.com, part of the GO Network. Now stay tuned for your local news and World News Sunday over most of these stations.